to Billy Bremner and Leeds United.
I think it's a very sad day for Leeds. I think it's slightly sad for football.
This is an adventure, and I hope it can go a long way as an adventure.
We lived the dream. We enjoyed the dream.
I look on them all, every one of them in this club, as my own son.
Tonight on Leeds Leeds Leeds.
So Leeds United in their all-yellow strip today, just 90 minutes away from this record of 20 games without defeat.
They went running around with a cup and they were chanting cheats, cheats.
It was quite obvious on the field we couldn't win the match.
Brian Cluff had done a great job at Derby, but he was very critical of the Leeds players, so I think it was a big surprise to everybody.
They wouldn't really listen to him and didn't want him at the club.
To replace the best manager on record, or by record, in the Football League, then obviously Leeds had to get somebody that was, you know, slightly special.
If we ever get out of here. By the spring of 1973, Leeds United's achievements under manager Don Revie included the league title, 2 Fairs Cups, the FA Cup and the League Cup.
Free kick! Any more in the book on a Saturday doing that?
However, the roll of honour was nowhere near as long as it could or maybe should have been. Leeds had finished runners-up in the Championship 3 years in a row, so reaching 2 cup finals in a month offered a fully fit team the chance to replenish the trophy cabinet.
These are things that people don't really know about. When you're testing 2 world-class players like these two, how much difference it makes to such an important game as the one this afternoon. Well, Paul, Mick, very vital as you know.
I'm fine. I never felt it. I'm all right.
Oh, wonderful, Paul.
I think I'll get away with it.
Well done, Mick. This is great news for us, lads. Thanks very much.
Their May double began with the FA Cup final, touted as a no contest. Leeds were the holders. Their opponents, Bob Stokoe's Sunderland, came from the 2nd Division and were apparently just there to make up the numbers.
Before that game, though, the atmosphere at our place, I felt, was just a little bit uneasy. I think Don was a little bit uptight, Don Revie. I remember walking down the stairs, Peter Lorimer and I, and there was a photographer going to take a photo of Don, and Don had a go at him and dived at him, which was unusual for me, because he usually, even though he was under pressure or he was feeling pressure, he'd usually keep his cool, you know.
He had a superstition about people taking pictures the day of a game. So probably after the game or the next morning, Don will have thought that photographer cost us the cup final.
A deep one again. Watson is right in there. So too is Hallam. And Porterfield! Oh, Porterfield has scored!
And even when he whopped it in, I still thought, you know, we'll get back into this. And we started to pick it up. And we started to play, then there's that save.
Back this time for Reaney as Sunderland crowd them out. Reaney, the high one in, and Cherry going in, and a great save, and a goal, no! My goodness, I thought Lorimer got that one.
You still think it's going to get in the net, you don't know how it doesn't get in the net, it's incredible.
Give me the same ball, same thing, I'd hit it just the same, and I know the other 999 times out of 1,000 it would have gone in, but on the day it didn't go in and we'd lost the cup.
Nearly 2 minutes of injury time, and again the bench is urging everybody to go back, and Sunderland have done it! Stokoe can't believe it!
You see Bob Stokoe running on the park after the game, you know, hugging his players, and you could see with the elation that he showed after the game that he didn't really expect to win the game as such, you know. I don't think he could believe they'd win the game, but you know, it's tremendous, you know, for people in general to see games like that and realise that, you know, regardless of how powerful some clubs are, you've always a chance of winning games.
Just 11 days later, the city of Salonika in Greece was the setting for the European Cup Winners' Cup final against AC Milan. and for an astonishing performance by the Greek referee, one Christos Mikos, who might as well have been wearing Milan's kit. Cherugi's early goal won the cup for Milan. The referee was subsequently banned for bringing neutral officialdom into disrepute.
It was quite obvious on the field we couldn't win the match. In fact, it was so obvious that at the end of the game, when the celebration, obviously the trophy presentation, it was in Salonika in Greece, there was this word being shouted by all the Greek people, and we didn't have a clue what it was, and one of the Greek press guys who spoke English told us what they're chanting is shame at the referee. It was so obvious that they knew straight away what had gone on. I think Milan got banned for 4 years, didn't they, from Europe. The referee got banned for life. And the reason we didn't get awarded the trophy, seemingly, was because they said, well, yes, something happened, but they couldn't actually prove it was Milan Football Club who had done it.
I got sent off that day. I got a bit frustrated and had a kick at somebody, and then it went on from there. But I remember walking round, and I had my medal. I walked around with Terry Orth, and their fans, they were running around with a cup, and they were chanting cheats, cheats. I remember standing there, I looked at this medal, and I nearly chucked it. I nearly chucked it in the mud.
Hasn't been a good week. But I always feel it takes tremendous characters to start on Monday morning again after disappointments. But this one hasn't done the job. It spoils your steak. You don't enjoy your weekend. But on Monday morning, it takes me till Monday morning to get over it. But when I see all the lads' faces and we start off again, then I can lift myself as well as they can.
And lift themselves they did. The following season, Leeds put together a record unbeaten run of 29 games, suffered only 4 defeats, and claimed the 1974 League Championship in some style.
I'm mad. Got to get back. Need some get back. Hey back. Hey back. That's it. Hey back.
We were just playing absolutely superb. And he had said we'll go to the end of the season undefeated. And we all said that. And then we got rolling, we got winning, and we kept winning away very easily.
After, I think it was about 26 games, I think we were playing at QPR or somewhere, and we drew the match, having been in front. And he called a meeting on the Monday. So I was like, what's this all about? So we went in there and he says, right, he said, I'm going to tell you now and you listen. If you lot are not going to do it for me, I'll bring players in who will. And we'd just gone like 26, 27 games without a defeat.
If you lot aren't going to perform for me, I'm going to get the checkbook out. And we're going to get some new faces. And you sat there and you think, well, we've lost one game in 29.
There was always the possibility of being replaced in the team, even though you all knew that Don knew what his best team was, which is, again, a little different from today, perhaps. But two things, again, the World Cup before, they've just won the World Cup, they're together on the Sunday morning after it, and the squad are breaking up, and Jeff Hurst, who just scored the only hat-trick in World Cup final history, turns around and says, see you in September, Alf. And Ramsey looked across at him and said, if selected. You're not even as good as your last game. So Don was among an innovator in that way too, that the place was never secure, no matter how famous or established you might think you are.
The squad of players Gus has here now, for me that only happens once in a lifetime. I think Leeds United, probably when all of us are finished, they'll probably have a good team, but they'll not have a great team. This only happens for me, once in a lifetime.
And maybe Don Revie shared those thoughts. He knew that his side, built and nurtured over a 13-year period, couldn't go on winning forever, And after securing 2 league titles and 4 the timely offer of the England manager's job was enough to lure him away. He left convinced that the club would build on his legacy rather than closing the door on it.
First of all, there's the boss who's right behind us. He's the one who fills our hearts with pride. And we play all the way for Leeds United. Ellen Road is the only place for us. With heart and soul for the goal that's clearly sighted. We're out to toast each other from that silver cup.
In the summer of 1974, as Don Revie was hurrying off for the England job, he made a firm recommendation to the club chairman Manny Cousins that one of his key players of the past decade, Johnny Giles, should take his place in the manager's office.
I saw in the paper that Don was gone with England, and actually my contract was due for renewal, and I thought, well, I better get home and see Don before he goes. And when I got back, he said that he was recommending me for the job, which was a total surprise to me. Total surprise.
I felt that Johnny Giles was the man to take over when I left. Liverpool have shown that it's the right path to take. When Shankly left, Bob Paisley took over. Now Bob Paisley's left, Joe Fagans took over. Because they know the system, they know the training routines, and they know how the lads play and how to react and everything about the club. And Johnny Giles had been 10 years with me, and I thought he'd have been the right choice to take over.
It goes, Giles! A goal! A beautifully worked goal!
To all the players, Johnny should have taken over. Unfortunately, I don't think Billy thought that. I think Billy, to a degree, had thought that he was being brought forward to do the job. And I think it came as a great shock to Billy when Don recommended John. Now, Billy, I believe, had said that he was interested in the job himself. And I think what happened, that created some doubt in the chairman's mind, thinking, well, how will the team react if we put John in? This is Billy Bremner, the captain.
So the Leeds board declined to appoint from within and instead looked without. In fact, were they out of their minds? They chose the club's most outspoken critic, Brian Cluff. It was like inviting King Herod to babysit.
To replace the best manager on record, or by record, in the Football League, then obviously Leeds had to get somebody that was, you know, slightly special.
For 4 to 5 years before he joined Leeds United, after I left, he criticised Leeds United's system of playing and this and that, and they upped every trick in the book, and he criticised me and he criticised the players. So what board of directors could go out, really, and bring a man in who'd slammed Leeds United out of sight?
I have sat here now for approximately 2.5 hours, and I am not replying to anything or anybody until I have had a wee. And I'm being very serious. You get on your bloody feet, you go to the toilet, you get a beer, and then if you've not got to get up early in the morning, get back and listen.
2 years prior to joining Leeds, the then Derby manager had arrived late at a gala awards night. He'd missed Peter Lorimer receiving the Sportsman of the Year trophy from the Prime Minister, Harold Wilson. And with Lorimer having left early to travel to a game, Cluff simply couldn't resist a public attack.
I've come along to pay tribute to sport. I've come along to pay tribute to Peter Lorimer, who I didn't know had the award.
Just before he was due to speak, he stood up and he said, well, you lot have kept me waiting, I'm going to keep you lot waiting. And he went to the toilet. And then he came back, 10 minutes, Cluffy being Cluffy, and then he absolutely destroyed Peter Lorimer.
Despite the fact he falls as many times, when he hasn't been kicked, despite the fact that he protests as many times when there is nothing to protest about, despite the fact, yes.
I didn't actually hear his actual speech. It was only when the next morning all the papers were ringing me saying this, about what Cluff has said and what he's done, and he let his feelings go about Leeds. And I mean, personally, I'd always scored against his side, and so maybe he had a gripe against me. But I don't think for any time he actually criticised my ability. But you know, that was Brian, and we knew that at the time. And as I said, how they could possibly employ him as the manager was totally amazing.
Brian was torn between not liking Leeds and also being envious of them too, I think. There was a lot about Leeds. He would have liked a lot about Leeds. He'd have liked to have emulated.
Roker Park, December 26, 1963, and the playing career of Brian Cluff, the fastest goal scorer in British football, is virtually over. This week we welcome Brian Cluff to Leeds in his new job, manager of Leeds United. So how will his outspoken personality fit in with Leeds, and what can he do for a team that's done just about everything?
It was ridiculous for Leeds to appoint him, and it gave him a chance to try and destroy the edifice which he resented most, and that was bizarre.
I think they've been champions, and they've not been good champions in the sense of wearing the crown remarkably well. I think they could have been a little bit more loved. I'm going to bring a bit of warmth and a little bit more honesty and a little bit more of me into the setup, I hope.
He came in, and I'll never forget it as long as I live. He sat us down, and he just turned around and he said, "You see, you lot, I played under Revie. See all the caps and the medals that you won? You should find a dustbin and chuck them in there, because you cheated for those."
I had great fears of that bloody suit of his in the office when I walked in. You know, the one he's had 13 years? I thought, if that's there, that's going straight in the bin, because not only will it be old, it'll smell, you know, if you have a suit for 13 years.
Brian's been on record saying, you know, if I'd have been a horse, he'd have shot me. He's probably quite right at the time, because I had a lot of injuries. But he could have done that a bit better as well, you know. I don't think that endeared him to a few of the players, and especially somebody like himself who had to pack the game in early through injury. You know, I think he might have forgot about that happened to him.
No surprise then that new signings soon began to arrive, led by Duncan McKenzie, a young, flamboyant striker with an excellent line in mimicry.
Young man, Brian Cluff here. Now, don't mess me about, son. Are you going to Derby, or do you want to come to me at Leeds? And I just remember saying, I'd love the opportunity of speaking to you, Mr. Cluff. And he said, good lad, pack your bags. See you at the Victoria Hotel, Sheffield, half an hour. Don't be late.
Long-time Clough favourites John McGovern and John O'Hare received similar calls.
I'd worked for Clough at Hartlepool and then at Derby County before I went to Leeds. Knew his style was abrasive. Knew at times that certain players wouldn't like that style of management, but I'd learned to take out the good points of it and the constructive football points that he used to make, and I know that he did get the maximum from most players that would throw the lot in with him.
Sid Owen was a coach at the time, and he was stood at the back of the room, 25 yards away, and Brian Cluff would make a statement, and you would hear, "Ay, ay, 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 what a load of rubbish. Have you ever heard such rubbish in all your life?" And I mean, I'm sat at the front. I thought, well, he's not deaf. I mean, he's listening to this.
It was obvious from the way the side were playing that they weren't certainly living up to their reputations as players. Through the difficulty of either trying to understand how the manager wanted them to play, or more to the point, I think they wouldn't really listen to him and didn't want him at the club.
Clough's first game in charge was a 1-1 draw with Liverpool in the least charitable Charity Shield ever played. A mere prelude to the club's worst league start for 20 years. In 6 games under Clough, they managed just 1 win.
Players had been speaking to the directors, 1 or 2 of them saying he doesn't know how to manage, he can't do the job, which I found totally amazing. He's won the league championship at Derby. But the directors then became involved, and eventually they said, well, we'll call the manager in. so that it could be, instead of a private meeting between players and directors, there could be an open meeting. So Brian Cluff was called in. The directors then asked the players and said, well, you know, the manager's here now, any criticism, can you throw it at the manager? You know, and one or two players said, well, we don't think you know what you're doing. And to be fair to Cluff, I thought he would just absolutely go berserk when people are criticising him. But he didn't. He just said, well, perhaps I've been a bit too forthright. He says, and if we wipe the slate clean, perhaps we could start anew with the relationship. But I knew it had gone too far.
We're leaving, parting company in a very friendly way.
Would you agree with that, Brian? I mean, how can you feel friendly about being sacked, or at least having your contract terminated?
I'm feeling very friendly towards Mr. Cousins.
I was only on £15,000 a year when I left Leeds United, and you'd think that Brian Cluff comes in 44 days and took about 45,000 tax-free money away from Leeds United.
There'd been this hatred between Revie and Cluff for so long, and it was a strange move when you think Don Revie recommended Johnny Giles be given the job.
I can see clearly now.
Within hours of his sacking, Brian Cluff was sitting in a television studio alongside Don Revie.
When you walked in, tell me this, when you walked in, did you have a meeting the first day with him?
No.
Why?
Because I didn't think it was necessary to have a meeting the very first day.
So you were taking over as manager of a new club?
Yes.
And you don't call all your players and your coaching staff and your office staff together?
No.
And introduce yourself and meet them and tell them exactly what you feel and what you want to try and do?
Don! The first day I walked in, I came back from holiday and I did 2 hours training with them.
Cluffy had said, whose is this desk? And she said, well, it's yours, Mr. Cluff. Whose was this desk? I said, well, it was Mr. Revie's. And he said, I want it burnt.
When you've taken over a job of a man that's been there 10, 15 years, and he's been regarded as the kingpin, as the father figure, as the man that made everything tick, then within 7 weeks, it is impossible, utterly impossible, to replace that type of thing.
I think he tried to change things too quickly at a club. I think he thought he could come in and get the broom out and everything that Don Revie had achieved in the past 12, 14 years would disappear. And it wasn't going to be like that.
Next week for Leeds Leeds Leeds, a painful springtime in Paris.
What should have been the best moment of all turned out to be the worst.
But the best was still to come, even if it did spoil Howard's dinner.
I think we've just won the championship, Dad. Everybody immediately left the table and left me sitting there eating my Yorkshire pudding.